Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Placing Faces, the show where we sit down with some of the most influential casting directors in all of Hollywood and across the entertainment spectrum. I am your host, Charlie Chappell, and today we sit down with Casting Director and Vice President of the Casting Society of America, Rich Mento. Rich is a warm, funny, easygoing guy with a lot of really wonderful stories about the world of casting. From the unique challenges of individual film searches to the process of getting hired on a film as a casting director, and the efforts the CSA is making to further the recognition for the casting directors that do this work. He's cast projects like the Step Up series, Warm Bodies, and the Wackness, a movie I adore, Dear John, and a whole lot more. He's also the latest in a long, strong line of casting directors. We talk about the importance of mentorship, working alongside other casting directors, and how to find a person who fits the role and the role that fits the person. I hope you enjoy listening to Rich as much as I enjoyed talking to him, and I hope that you learn as much as I did. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come talk with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're excited. I like to talk first about the beginning. So how did you get into the industry, and what were things that led you into becoming a casting director?
I thought it would be fun, which it is. I was on my way to law school. My undergraduate degree is in political science, and I got into the law school of my dreams, and then I wouldn't say I had a panic attack, but I decided I didn't really necessarily want to do 3 more years of school. Mm-hmm. And a good friend of mine was working as a casting assistant in New York, and we were talking, and he said, you know, you'd actually be really good at this. Why don't you come up to New York and see what I do? We had done sort of summer stock community theater together, and we're friends. And so I did, and as my mother tells the story, I never went home, which isn't true. I actually went back to Philadelphia, got my stuff, and moved to New York. So I moved to New York, and I took 3 meetings. I didn't get the job that I wanted originally, so I spent almost a year, as an agent assistant at a small agency in New York. And then I would say about 9 or 10 months later, the casting job that I wanted originally that I didn't get became available again. Mm-hmm. And so I took that, and I started as a casting assistant in 1996.
Sure. It seems to be a pattern with the people that we've talked to so far that a lot of you guys have worked on the agency side, at least in the very beginning, and realized that some of them have put it in the sense that rather than being a seller, you wanted to be a buyer.
I definitely had that. It's funny, I sort of thought about it for a bit, and then I went to my bosses at the agency and said, look, I can do this job. I could do this job really well. I'm not passionate about it. It's not what I want to be doing, and this opportunity to work as a casting assistant has come back up again, and this is what I'd like to try. And so I moved over. It kind of was I kind of landed in casting, but it really does suit me. And it's funny, the friend that introduced me more or less to casting passed away a couple years ago. He had left casting and moved into advertising. But I'm still doing it.
What sort of things did you learn on the agency side that benefited you when then moving into casting?
Just really how the process works. It was the 90s still, so there were fax machines. There was no internet. Mm-hmm. There was no computer at my desk. Breakdown services were hand delivered to the agencies in New York and slid under the door. So I would get in the morning and pick it up off the floor. But it's still the same. We had a filing system of pictures. Now they're all electronic, but it's still looking at the breakdowns, seeing which clients are right. It's just the other side of the conversation.
Sure.
And then spending the day calling casting directors, pitching your clients. Mm-hmm. That's just it. I could do it. I have a lot of friends who are agents and managers, and I look at what they do every day, and it's just not how I want to spend my day.
Okay.
And I knew that in under a year.
What sort of things tipped you off that that wasn't the case? I guess what I'm trying to get at is just what is it about the casting side that is the draw to people? Because there's a lot of people that I think are going to listen to this show that are still trying to figure out what it is that they want to do in this industry.
It's a little bit what you said before. It's a little bit of sales that is not in my nature, because it is selling actors a little bit. That's just not one of my skill sets. It's not something that ever interested me. But I like telling stories. And, you know, as I said before we started, I'm a terrible actor. I have done it, but I've never actually wanted to do it as a living. But I like telling stories, and I'm not a writer. And I've loved actors and performance and television and film and pop culture my whole life. It just sort of fit.
It was the right fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's and I think that that's ultimately how people have to go about figuring out where they fit, is trying those different things. And it seems like from the conversations that we've had, that process of really trying to figure it out, really trying to testing out the waters in different places, but still, like, you end up falling into the place that does ultimately fit if you stick around long enough.
Yeah, I think so. I've toyed with management ideas over the last couple of years. It just doesn't suit me. It doesn't fit. It's not the relationship that I want to have with actors. It's a beneficial one. But it's also a very difficult one, I think. I had a manager for a while. She's great, but it just didn't work out. And working at the talent agency, I watched that happen. And it was devastating for the agents. It was a smaller agency. When clients left, when clients fired their agents, when clients got poached, it's just not what I wanted to put my time into. Mm-hmm. And casting has its ups and downs anyway, but it's different.
Yeah. Well, I usually get into like early career, and we'll definitely talk about some of your early stuff. But instead of talking about your first film immediately, which we'll definitely get to, I want to talk about the lineage of casting directors that you've kind of worked with. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of your early work was as a casting associate with, and I'm going to say this twice just in case, Joanna Colbert? Mm-hmm. Colbert.
Yep.
She's known for Hollywoodland. You worked with her on Chloe, Mr. Nobody. She did Van Helsing, Half Baked, Happy Gilmore, Blues Brothers 2000. But her early career was working with Juliet Taylor.
Yes.
Which is, sort of a royalty figure in casting. People who know anything about anything in casting, the movie Casting By, Juliet Taylor is a big standing force within casting, from The Exorcist to Taxi Driver to Schindler's List and Big. And is there any sage advice that has kind of been passed down through that lineage of working with people who have worked with people who have kind of defined this role?
I'd have to think about it a bit for sage advice, but how I like to think of it is, Joanna and I worked for her for a couple of years, and then we were partners for 5 or 6. And she's got great taste. She's awesome. But I actually, when she left Universal and I went to work for her when she went out sort of and opened her own company. But I had already worked. I had worked on Broadway. I had worked at CBS. I had worked at Sony Television out here. So she's sort of the end of my people that I worked for list. And I like to think of it as the casting directors along the way. I sort of have taken a little bit from each of them and how they do it and molded that into my philosophy and how I approach casting.
How do you mean?
I would say my mentor, I don't know whether he would call himself that, but the person from whom I learned the most about casting is a casting director named Mark Sachs, who does mostly television, goes back and forth from New York and LA. He's extremely organized, mm-hmm. and I am extremely organized from working with him, I think. Casting in general, you have to be organized. It's a very secretarial job to a certain extent. It's a lot of numbers and names and prices and quotes, and you have to be organized to be a casting director. But my day-to-day and how I approach projects is most like him. But I've also, my first casting director I learned from, the second one I learned from, Mark I learned from, Joanna I learned from, people I've partnered with I've learned from. You can't, there's no school, there's no casting college.
Mm-hmm. So learning, picking up little bits and pieces about how they work.
You work for someone, you work with someone, and you develop your own style, for lack of a better word.
How important do you think that has become in today's world of casting compared to how it used to? Because it used to, you would work with somebody, but there literally was no film school. There was nothing. Nobody really had formalized any way of doing anything. So in the modern era, how important do you think it is working with other casting directors, getting in the door as an assistant, then an associate, and kind of working your way up the ranks instead of going just straight to, I'm just going to start casting these short films and then I'm going to cast?
I think it depends on the person. I've been doing this a long time now, and there certainly has been an explosion in the number of casting directors, but there's also been an explosion in the number of projects. I think it's important to work for someone. I think simply it takes years to learn actors. Yes, anyone can just turn around and say, I'm a casting director, and people do, and they're good at it, and that's great. But it's not just, the job isn't just looking on IMDb, for example, and putting in an age range and saying, oh, I recognize that person. There's a lot more to it that I think you can only learn over a period of time. Otherwise, you just don't have the exposure to the actors. And I think what's most important is learning how to navigate situations with producers, with studios, with networks. It's a bit not Machiavellian, but there's an art to it. The casting is about getting people on the same page sometimes. Joanna actually often says, casting directors always feel like the child of divorced parents, because people don't always want the same thing. The director disagrees with the producer, who disagrees with the studio. And the casting director, part of our job is to find some consensus.
To mediate all of those different voices.
While also advocating for what we think is best. We don't always get our way.
But you still have to learn how to fight for that. You have to learn how to navigate those conversations. And
yes.
Yeah.
Well, look, because ultimately, I think casting directors get blamed. If a project doesn't move forward because it's not cast or it's cast poorly, for right or wrong, casting directors are blamed. And I don't know, sometimes I'm sure it's a casting director's fault, but it's also, there's a lot of personalities and a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
If the director knows who he or she wants and the studio doesn't approve it, who's right? I don't know. The studio's paying for it. They get a say. It's the director's vision in film, especially. They get a say. If they can't come to an agreement and the movie doesn't get made, is that the casting director's fault? Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah. So much to navigate.
It is. It's a lot of cajoling. It's a lot of strategy. And that's stuff that I don't think, that takes time to learn. It's learned by watching other good casting directors, being silent on, it's the way agents' assistants learn, being silent on phone calls and listening into negotiations. I think a lot of that is also true for casting assistants.
That's the first time we've heard that, and that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and also working with actors. Yes, part of a casting director, casting associate, whatever job is to put actors on tape. But turning a camera on and off is not casting. It's a taping facility. Sometimes that's needed. Sometimes it's appropriate. But learning how to direct actors, if you haven't gone to school for it, it takes time.
Now, when you say directing actors, you're talking about directing those actors in the room and taking somebody who comes in with strong choices, but may not be necessarily the choices that you think will get them the role or what the director might be looking for, and saying, hey, try it this way because this.
Yes, look, with the start of the internet age, more and more projects are being cast by self-tapes. So, or having actors come into a casting office without the producer, without the director. So the casting director needs to be able to say, okay, this tape that was sent to me is completely wrong, but the actor obviously can act and just made choices that are not what we're looking for. How do I get them from point A to point B? Someone who just says, hey, I want to cast a movie now, may or may not have that skill. But if you've watched good casting directors over a period of years, you learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm. How to push them or pull them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to get into a little bit of some of your films. And like I said, we would talk about the first one that the first feature that you were credited, at least on IMDb, as casting director. Sometimes IMDb skips some things, was Step Up.
It was, actually.
Which is out of the bag. That's a great start as a casting director.
It was, actually, and I have Joanna really to thank for that. When we started that movie, I was the casting associate, and because of other things that we were doing in the office and specific things to the project, she bumped me up.
Awesome.
We had to let go our local casting director, and I went to Baltimore twice and did the local casting as much as I could myself. And I know she felt it was warranted, and so I was bumped up to casting director.
So she was kind of a champion for you, as well as being somebody who showed you some of the ropes.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot from each other. I think was one of the strengths of that collaboration. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Step Up, I guess, was my first on-screen casting credit.
Yeah. And I mean, that is a movie. Channing Tatum is the star of that movie, mm-hmm.
Along
with his ex-wife,
separated, divorced. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyways, he's done movies before that, but this is what put him on the map. This is what
it is,
and people
I
were like, "Oh, that guy."
Yeah, he had done a number of movies before, and a number of actually really good performances. I met him. I'm gonna say I met him in 2003. I read him for a movie that Joanna cast that I was the associate on. He was totally wrong for the role. And I just remember his agent was a friend, pitched him. He had really only done that Mountain Dew commercial that mm-hmm. sort of everyone sort of, who is that guy? And I read him and I wrote down, completely wrong, but this guy's a star. And
what was it that what is it that you see in somebody like that that's like star? That's the quality.
Just the it factor. You can't explain it.
Nobody can explain it.
No, but he was totally wrong.
Totally right.
He was totally wrong for the role.
Yeah. But he was right for something.
But he was right
big.
For something.
Yeah.
And whether it was, Guide to Recognizing Your Saints that came after that, or, any of the other movies that he did, when someone's right for the role, they're right for the role.
And it's undeniable in Step Up, because I rewatched it. He is really, really good in that movie. Not only can he dance, but he's a good actor.
He is a good actor.
I think people are more on board with that now, but especially early in his career, I don't know if people thought he was pretty and could dance and all that stuff, but he is a good actor. He's got range and chops.
He does. He's the type of actor that I prefer, because he does have skills, but he also always wants to be better. And he always mm-hmm. tries to challenge himself and do things that he hasn't done before. And that I find the most interesting. They're the actors that I really like the mm-hmm. most. I have a special, because I also cast Dear John, which he was in.
Yeah.
So I have, I have an affinity for Mr. Tatum, But, the first Step Up movie, the movie works on a number of levels. It's a similar story that people have seen before in dance movies and other movies. But, Anne's work is amazing. The choreography is great.
Yes, it is.
But the movie, for me, lives and continues to live on the connection between Channing and Jenna.
And it's a great
it's
connection.
Palpable.
Yeah.
And then years later, people understand why they were falling in love.
Well, and I'm curious, was that in the casting process? If you were around for those, was there a chemistry read between the two of them?
Was funny.
It that palpable?
Yes.
In the beginning, it was.
There was a definite attraction. Obviously, Jenna brought skills to the job on her own. I think she was one of the last people we read because I think she was off on the Justin Timberlake tour, and we just couldn't get her to audition. She wasn't in town. But it's funny, when we were casting Dear John, I burned a DVD. That's how long ago that was. I burned a DVD for Channing. Here's the moment you and Jenna met. Because it was a chemistry read, and I walked her in and said, Jenna Dewan, this is Channing Tatum, Jenna Dewan. And I was like, this is the actual moment on camera that you two met. And he laughed. But yeah, so that was palpable.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also curious if anybody had a clue that this movie, this dance movie, 2006, when other stuff was kind of happening around that and was going to make as much of an impact as it did, and then turn into this series that's still going. They're still making Step Up franchise stuff.
Yeah, they are. Look, I think you always hope that. I don't know that when you'd have to ask Adam Shankman and Jen Gibgot when they started, did they think there would be 5 movies? I think they probably would say no, but I think we were very proud of the first movie, and then certainly the second movie, entirely different flavor, and sort of, I think, then set the bar for the rest of them.
Yeah, because I mean, you were part of Step Up to the Streets, Step Up 3D, Step Up Revolution, and Step Up All In.
Actually, I'm the only casting director on all 5 films, because Joanna didn't do the last one.
Sure.
And then Terry Taylor, who's head of casting at Blumhouse, was on Step Up 2 with us.
Okay.
Because we were doing, I think we had 2 other movies at the same time. So the 3 of us cast the second one, then Joanna and I cast the third one, Joanna and I cast the fourth one, and then I cast the 5th one.
What has that been like, casting throughout the lifespan of this franchise?
It was a great education. It was a wonderful experience. I'm very, very grateful to Offspring Entertainment for keeping me on for 5 films. It's, other than Jen and Adam, maybe the music supervisor, Jamal Sims, who started off as an assistant choreographer and then ended up choreographing the later movies, and me, I think we're the creatives through all 5 films. Because the directors changed, obviously. Yeah. The writers changed. John Chu was instrumental in 2 through everything else, I think. But for the most part, I think that's the handful of us. There's 5 or 6 of us, I think, that had a part in each of the films. It's a decade of my life.
Yeah. That's kind of cool.
It is very cool, actually.
Because I don't think a lot of people get that sort of experience of working on a property outside of television, perhaps. Especially with films, like to be able to see something like that start and do so well, and then be able to continue on and tell stories within that same vein.
We created a world.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So when you're casting for films like this franchise, there's a lot of grueling work that these performers must do. And I say performers, not just actors, because there are singers, there are dancers, there are musicians. There are a lot of double, triple, quadruple threat performers in these films. All that, and they still have to be able to act and carry a movie. How much harder is it to find these types of performers, especially today? Because I feel like it used to be, back in the 60s, back in the 50s, You
when
came to
everyone was a
Hollywood.
triple threat.
Everybody
Yeah.
was a triple threat. You worked in the studio system. They taught you how to dance. They taught you how to sword fight. They taught. Now that seems to be like there's less double, triple, quadruple threat.
I think there is. We made a very specific, and when I say we, I mean Ann Fletcher and Jen and Adam, when we started, that we didn't want to double. You know, there's some really great and iconic dance movies that the dancing is doubled, and we didn't want to do that. And I think, unless my memory is faulty, other than for injury, we didn't double anything in any of the movies. And so I think that's what makes them work for me. That's what makes, Robert Hoffman can dance, Brianna Evigan can dance, Ryan Guzman can dance. It's you make trade-offs. Sometimes it's not the strongest actress, but they can dance. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you find it all in one. Sometimes you give someone a start, like Channing, who was obviously right for the role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see that take place in the sense that there are so few people who can do all of those things, but then when you find that one who can,
well, it's funny.
It's special.
I'll tell you. So step up 1, 2, and 3, we sort of took the same process, meaning we, put out a breakdown, talked to the agents, read some actors, found who we liked, and then had them dance. And there were mixed results. There were some really great actresses who were really right for the role who couldn't dance, as well as Jenna. And so in her, we found someone who could act it, who could dance it, and who also had chemistry with Channing. And that's, why she got the job.
And arguably why the movie works so well.
Absolutely. But we found ourselves every time we started the process, there were people that we wanted for the role that just weren't good enough dancers. And so on the 4th movie, I called Jen Gibgot and I said, look, I want to do this in reverse. Instead of reading a bunch of actors and then nixing people who can't dance at the level that we obviously need. But by the time we did Step Up 3 in 3D on the streets of New York, we've set a standard.
Yeah.
I said, what I want to do is I want to talk to the agents and I want to see who they like for the role, who can dance. And I want to dance everybody first so that we're not left. I mean, over the course of the dancing of the 3 movies, actresses were crying because the dancing is hard. And it's very different to say, I like to take a dance class than I am a dancer. They're very 2 different things.
Strong dancer.
And so I tried it on Step Up 4. I had everyone, the agents flipped out. Couldn't understand why I wanted to do this. How dare we ask people to dance first? They just want their actors to come in and read. And I had to say, you've seen the bar that we've set. If they can't dance this well, they're not going to be in the movie. Why? I don't want to read them. That's not fair to them, let alone me and my time or our time. And so we did it. And I won't say it worked. It worked as well, but we had less brokenheartedness as filmmakers when, you find an actress who says, look, it's not just actresses. You find an actor or an actress who says, yes, I can dance. Yes, I can dance. Yes, I can dance. And then you find out, no, you can't dance. Not at the level that we need. Everything else about you is perfect.
So you're saving yourself that heartache.
And the actor. Because we set a bar.
Did you continue that under the 5th movie?
The 5th movie was different. The 5th movie was sort of like a homecoming, all-stars. I want to say maybe I added 3 or 4 roles.
Yeah.
And we did. There was one role that we read a couple of actors, and they just weren't up for the dancing.
Yeah, it's going to be heartbreaking.
It is.
Is there any advice that you have for actors and dancers, all-around performers like these people who are auditioning for these kinds of roles?
I would say it'd be the same advice that I give to actors for anything, which is know what you're auditioning for. do your homework. If it's a series of movies, watch the other ones. If it's a TV show, watch some episodes if it has been aired. And
that tone.
and be honest with yourself. Know the tone, know the style, and know what you can do and what you can't do. And
so being honest with yourself is of utmost importance.
Look, that's Sharni Vinson, the female lead of 3. Mm-hmm. Her agent called me, or Ryan Guzman, the 4 and 5. Their manager agents called me and said, my client can dance. And I said, okay, let's try them. And their clients could dance. We had a lot of it not working out over the course where my client can dance. My client takes dance classes all the time. Your client likes to dance. They're a decent dancer. They're better than me, but they're not Robert Hoffman, who is a dancer.
And can act. Yeah.
Know yourself.
Yeah. That's a hard thing.
It is a hard thing.
I think it's a lot harder than people realize, because you come into this town thinking, I can do it all.
It's also hard to watch actresses burst into tears during chemistry reads and tests because they're not at the level and they thought they were. It's heartbreaking.
I can only imagine how heartbreaking that is. How is that an occurrence that you've seen multiple times?
I would say mostly on the first one, but that was the start. And then you sort of set the bar. Like, this is the level of dancing that we're doing. Mm-hmm. You either can do it or you can't do it.
Well, now switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about another one of your movies, Warm Bodies.
Yes.
I love Warm Bodies. It's a really fun movie. I love these types of movies that are genre pieces that kind of play within the genre, that incorporate love, but kind of do something different than any of the other movies in that genre at the time. So this one's directed by Jonathan Levine.
Yes.
Starring Nicholas Hoult, Teresa Palmer, Rob Corddry, Dave Franco, Annalee Tipton, and John Malkovich. It's the story of a weird kind of zombie character who's introspective.
It's Romeo and Juliet with zombies.
Yeah. That's a great description of it. That's perfect. Using this film as an example, I kind of want to talk about how, one, casting directors come to a project, and I would love to walk through this project of how you became attached to it, and then maybe some of the steps and stages of going from I'm attached, I have the script, I like the script, and attaching the team that ultimately makes that movie.
Well, Joanna and I had worked with John Levine on the Wackness before, and
we'll get into that one in a little bit.
I
wanted
had
to save that one till later.
And this project was announced, and Summit Lionsgate, that company, obviously had made Step Up and the others, so I had a relationship with them. I actually advocated, pushed, begged to work on Warm Bodies.
Why is that?
Because I wanted to do it, and casting is quite competitive.
What was that based on? What
I wanted to work with John again.
Okay.
And I did not know the property. Obviously, it's a novel, but I heard what it was about, and I wanted to work with John again. And so I called friends at the studio, and they weren't quite ready, and they started a process of finding the actor to play Nick's role. They made a couple of offers, didn't work out for whatever reason, and came to me. They had made, I think, if I remember correctly, they had made the offer to Nick, but needed to screen test him. So out there in the universe is, on camera, is me reading Teresa Palmer's lines opposite Nicholas Hoult, grunting as a zombie who can't speak in John Levine's living room.
Is this online?
Not that you can see.
No? Okay.
No. But yes, it exists. John, of course, being the hilarious man that he is, made sure I was in some of the shots, which I absolutely hated. But yeah, so obviously Nick was was the guy we were all waiting for. Nick signed on, and then the studio put me and Joanna, but I sort of took point on that one. on what is known as a step deal, which is we have to find the female lead. And we're not going to say we're making the movie really until we know who the female lead is. So I don't remember whether it was 3 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever. But then the casting process started for that role. When we had that role, then they pushed the button to make the full film. And we started reading the other roles. So it was, it was a very concentrated focus on the role that ended up going to Teresa Palmer. And then it was the other roles.
So it's land the main two roles
for this. I mean,
then build around that.
Yeah, not all movies would work the same way, but for Warm Bodies, it was I made a huge list of actresses. In my head, I actually call it the Teresa Palmer list. She also did a movie for me at Universal called Take Me Home Tonight, and I adore her. But all the actresses that could play that role. And then we did a conference call with the president of the studio and my creative executive and John and the producer. And he ended the call by telling us who on that list he was interested in making this movie. Check some avails. Some people aren't going to do it for the money that we have. Some people weren't available. Then I brought in, I want maybe 30 actresses to read. And Teresa won the job in the room. She was the right person for the role. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a very long process because I don't think the studio was interested in making the movie with a complete unknown.
So then after that process of finding those two characters, how long was the process then of finding the rest of the cast to fill that out?
I want to say my deal was 5 weeks, but we ended up going for 6. Most of which
seems like a really quick turnaround.
It was. Well, there weren't that many roles.
Yeah.
It was, Rob. It was Rob, and John Malkovich was an offer, obviously. Dave Franco, Anna Lee, John. I guess
you're right. There really aren't that many.
There's not that whole lot.
There's
a
lot of
there's
characters
a lot of
around
characters.
Them. Yeah.
Andrea Kenyon in Montreal did a lot of that, and I think she cast actually a lot of roles that ended up not speaking. I feel like I did all of the speaking roles because there's not a whole lot of speaking with the zombies. John ended up going to Montreal. I think I did one director session with him in LA. Everything else was on tape. He had so much pre-production to do that, they converted an old section of an airport in Montreal to shoot. So he had a lot of pre-production work to do. I did everything on tape. We sent him tapes and talked about it and talked to the studio and made some offers. And I want to say it was 5 weeks, maybe 6.
Well, because this was your second film with him, did you already have an established speak and understanding
a little
between
bit,
one another?
Yeah, a little bit. It's nice to have a shorthand with directors. I value that very highly. This was a difficult one in that tonally it's horror. It's also a little bit of romantic comedy. That's what I think John did the best with, is sort of making that work in one cohesive film.
Yeah.
But how do you audition a zombie?
Did you audition?
You feel it out. You try things. You take suggestions. The director directs for a bit, and you try to match tone and style. And sometimes, like Rob Corddry, I think I want to say he's the third person that read for the role. He was the first day, and that's who I wanted.
Yeah.
And he was awesome.
But
barely has any lines.
Yeah, but Rob Corddry's amazing.
Yes, he is.
He's a really incredible actor.
Yes.
How often is it that the people that you're seeing early on in the process are the people that set the tone, at least, for what you end up searching for? Even if it's not the person who gets it, but they're setting a bar.
Well, it's funny. Casting is one of those departments that comes on very early. There's a writer, there's a producer, there's a director. But a lot of times I find directors have only heard the script in their head when they start casting. And so the process and the film is informed by the first or second or third group of actors that come in. It's happened a number of times where I say to the director, this scene doesn't work. These are amazing actors and they can't make it work. Maybe this joke isn't landing. This isn't. And because they haven't table read it, the director sits at home and reads and thinks in his head, or she, what she wants to happen. and the director, but the actors are the ones informing the process. You get a good sense for what the movie is going to be like or how the director is going to be on set by how they direct the actors in the room. So it's an early peek into
It's almost a previs.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Interesting.
and then we finish our job around the time that everyone else starts, and then they go off and make the movie.
Yeah.
But I would say if a casting director is on the same page as the director, and obviously that's not always the case, and people's tastes change and ideas for roles change, but it's often that someone in the first session is the person who gets the job. Because casting directors are hired for their opinion. We want to be impressive. And so of course we want the people that we think could actually get the job in the first session.
Of course. I did my job. Here are the right people for the job in the first call.
Well, that's what I like to say to actors is, I date myself, but in the 70s there was there's a hair care company named Vidal Sassoon, and their slogan worldwide was, "If you don't look good, we don't look good." That's my philosophy of casting. And I try to tell actors that, when you come into audition, I want you to do a good job because I want you to get the role, and for a number of reasons. But selfishly, if you don't do a good job, that reflects poorly on me. So actors who have this "it's us against the casting director" mentality don't really understand what casting directors do. If you're in the room, there's something about you that the casting director wants to see, or wants to try, or thinks is right. We're on your side as much as we're on the side of the production. So it's interesting just to play around with actors and to try different things, because that just informs the whole process.
I think it's important. That's one of the things that I've taken away from doing this show, is how much casting directors really do want actors to succeed. It's not, like you said, us versus them.
I love actors. I like I said, I am a terrible actor, but I love actors. I love the art. I love the craft. I love theater. It's something that I've always gravitated toward, as we talked about earlier in the interview. But from a purely business, selfish, I guess, I want us to have a good day. I feel like I've done my job well if at the end of the casting process I can say to the director or the producers, the writers of the studio, whomever, here are 3, here are 5, here are 2 actors. You can make this project with these actors. It'll be wildly different projects, different versions of the role, but they can all do it, and they can all do it well. Now, who do you want? My job's done. I have an opinion. If you want my opinion, I'll give it to you. But otherwise, all 5 of these actresses would be amazing. You like them all. Now let's talk about who's best, and let's get specific. But that's when my job is done. When I've brought choices, and then everyone else can weigh in. And the studio likes this person better, or this person has better chemistry, or whatever, then it's out of my hands. I still like to always try to get what I want, but it doesn't always happen.
Because you're a creative as well.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen, but sometimes there's arguments. Sometimes. And
how do you mitigate those?
You pick and choose your battles. There was one of the male leads of Safe Haven, not the Josh Duhamel role, the role that David Lyons got. I had been a huge fan of David's. I can't remember what his NBC series was called at the time, but we were down to a couple of choices, and production was already in North Carolina, and I was sitting in an extra office at Marty Bowen's company at Temple Hill, finishing the auditions. They were all there, and I wanted David. David, it was between him and I think 2 other actors at the time. And I wrote Lassa, who I had worked with on Dear John before. I wrote him an email, and I said, both actors can do it. This is why David's right, but you guys have to make this decision. And my production executive, who I knew well, called me and said, Lassa read your email to everyone. And I was like, oh, that's not really what I wanted to happen. But, I made my case, and I got what I wanted, which I thought was best for the project. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes there's yelling, you know.
It's a lot of creative minds all coming together.
It's a lot of creative minds. I mean, I have more than once said to a producer, you know, you hire me for my opinion. This is my opinion. This is why I think you should do this. Make your decision. It's not my decision.
It's at a certain point you kind of have to let go of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How tough is that?
Very. I mean, that's another thing for actors to understand is there's so many people with so many opinions, and so figuring out who gets the role sometimes has nothing to do with the actor. I'm always best actor wins. That's not always the metric of who gets the job.
Mm-hmm. The unfortunate truth of it.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of opinions. The bigger the production, the more opinions. That's why, I mean, right now, currently in my career, I spend a lot of time in independent film, which I love, but it's hard. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to get things made. But what I like most about it is that conference calls are me, the director, and a producer. Mm-hmm. I get a lot of say. There's no studio executives. Mm-hmm. You know, usually the producer will talk to the financiers. I don't have to deal with any of that on a smaller budget movie, but I get a lot of say. Mm-hmm. I cast a movie a couple years ago called Juggernaut, which was a $1.5 million American. It was shooting in Vancouver, and it's about a year and a half. Put it together twice. It fell apart twice over cast, actors taking better jobs, and good for them. But I finally went to my team and said, we've made 12, 13, whatever offers. I can't guarantee that you're making a movie this year. This actor's fallen out. The rest of the actors have now fallen out. If the goal is for the writer-director who had not made a feature before to make a film this year, you have to cut the budget. And they did, which lessened the name value of the actors that I needed. And I handed them their cast. I just said, here's 4 actors that will do the role. They'll do it for the money. They've already read it. They like it. You can make the movie. Like that's a lot of my input. I don't always get that much say. But that was
Do you prefer that? I mean, there's probably no prefer one or the other, but that sounds like a lot of freedom.
Of course.
A lot more freedom.
I had
in the
almost
creative
total
process.
freedom.
Yeah.
It was a telefilm financed film, so they have rules for non-Canadians and rules for Canadians and what people need to get paid. So I had parameters in which to work, but there's so many great actors coming out of Canada. It's easy. It was easy.
All because you cut the budget.
They slashed the budget and I didn't need as big of a name.
Yeah.
And so there was an actor, that's not true. I had 2 actors read for the lead role that I know both could do it. And both were interested, and both would have been amazing. And the director ended up choosing an actor that I had put in another movie, who I think is amazing, and they went and made the movie. Mm-hmm. We could still be waiting for someone to say yes if I were going after the group of actors that everyone goes after for everything.
Interesting. So advice in the realm of, if you're an early filmmaker, instead of going after, sometimes it's better instead of going after that same group that everybody's going after and waiting your turn to work with them. Well,
it depends on the situation. It depends on where your financing comes from. It depends on, whether you're repped at a big agency, who's standing behind you and helping you make the movie. But for everyday filmmakers trying to start out, look, if you can get Colin Farrell to do your first feature, awesome, get Colin Farrell. But most people don't have the access or the right project for Colin Farrell. For a first-time filmmaker, your first film is your calling card. You use that to get your next film. Mm-hmm. So if you've been waiting 5 years to pull the financing together and you haven't made a movie, I would make the argument, go the Tangerine route and make a movie for $50,000 that's amazing. If you're that good of an artist, if you're that good of a director, prove it.
Love that.
And
Absolutely.
if that's no names, you hire a great casting director, obviously. But if that's people that don't have name value, go make a good movie. Let that stand for you. Then again, if Julianne Moore wants to do your movie, take Julianne Moore. Always take Julianne Moore. But you know what I'm saying? So it's, go, and and digital and iPhones and camera packages, you can fairly inexpensively make a film that's good, that looks expensive.
Mm-hmm.
There's no excuse.
There really isn't.
There really isn't.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. And I say that to actors too. I don't have anything for my demo reel.
Go make it.
Go make something.
Yeah. So another one that I want to get to is the Wackness.
Yes.
I love the Wackness. It is, and I know I say that a lot on the show, that I love a lot of movies. The Wackness is, I've seen it like 4 or 5 times, and I still watched it again for this interview because
really, it's funny. It's on. I want to go back. I haven't watched it in a couple of years. I want to go back and rewatch it.
Such a good movie, and it makes sense why it won the Audience Award at Sundance. Yeah. It should have made more money in the box office, but that's neither here nor there.
No.
Another one, Jonathan Levine.
Yes.
Starring Ben Kingsley, Josh Peck, Famke Janssen, Olivia Thirlby, and Mary-Kate Olsen.
Yeah, Olivia's on my... I have a number of actors that I've cast twice that I'm trying to find the third thing for.
Yeah.
Teresa Palmer, Olivia, Rob Corddry.
What does it take to get on that list? Be good.
Yeah, be awesome. Be awesome.
Yeah.
It's just sort of worked out that way. That cast, I really like that movie, and it's that's why, as I said, that's what made me chase down John to work on his next film.
What sort of growth did you see from him, and even from yourself, over the course? Because that was 4 years later, 5 years later,
probably somewhere
about 5
around
years.
That, yeah.
What sort of growth had you gone through over that time from casting Wackness, and then working with him again?
I mean, that was early on as a casting director. I went to New York and did a lot of the New York casting there with him. Trying to think I think just, confidence, taste level, learning how he likes to work. Mm-hmm. I want to say in between, I feel like I did his first and third. I feel like 50-50 was in the middle there, mm-hmm. Which I did not cast. And so we were trying to find, he called me about it and it didn't quite work out. So we were trying to find something to do, and that's why I chased down Warm Bodies. But the Wackness, it's a special movie.
It really is.
And I got to cast Sir Ben Kingsley.
Was that a offer, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I figure, Sir Ben, you have to offer things to.
Yes.
But you did get to cast him.
Yes.
And he is, the chemistry that he has with Josh in that movie is special.
Yeah. Josh earned that role. I mean, I want to say we read 300 actors, some of whom are huge movie stars now, but they just weren't right.
Yeah.
I could have made the movie with him, but they weren't. Josh earned that in the room.
What was it about what he did in the room that earned that? Was it just...
I think he was closest to how John saw it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're also the writer, you kind of try to get your way.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah. I think it's... Hearing these sort of things as an actor is really important, because knowing that you read 300 people for that role, and that it could have been maybe a few of them, but it came down to what the writer-director had specifically in their head.
Yeah.
And that even some other actors who have gone on to be huge didn't get that role. There's still opportunity, and there's still... How many things either get in the way or open the way for an actor to grow and to be seen in the industry?
How many things get in the way?
Well, get in the way may be the wrong way of putting it. I think what I'm trying to say is that as an actor, oftentimes, especially early on in your career, you beat yourself up. Like, why am I not booking? Why is this not working? I'm going on hundreds of auditions and I'm never getting anything. What's going on? And it's not necessarily in the way, but there are just 1,000 different things that go into who gets a role.
Oh, absolutely. For that role, I think one of the largest factors in Josh getting cast is Josh wanting that job. You know, he had his own Nickelodeon series. He was a child actor. He was known for a certain thing, and he, like Channing, wanted to grow, wanted to do different things, and he worked hard. I couldn't tell you how many times we had him audition. I don't really remember, but it was more than once. It was more than twice. He worked for it. Mm-hmm. He wanted the job.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of actors not booking, you know, my first question is, are you getting called back? Are the same casting offices calling you in? You're not getting the job, but you're getting opportunities. That's a big part of the win, because that means the casting director sees something in you. And if it didn't work out, yes, it's disappointing. Yes, everyone needs to make money. But if you're getting called back consistently, you will book something. It will happen. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, there's, you know, hundreds of people just like you that we could put in that slot, but we chose you.
Yeah.
That has to count for something. I know it doesn't count for a lot. Look,
but
you couldn't
right.
You couldn't pay me to be an actor. Like, it's really, really hard. Mm-hmm. You know, gut wrenching, soul crushing hard.
Well, and I think too few actors realize that casting directors understand that. You know, too many actors think of casting directors as gatekeepers, and I don't think that that's the case. I think that,
look, there is some truth to that, but you know, I've been doing this 20 whatever years, and I still find myself explaining to my family, none of whom are in entertainment, what I do. And I finally have distilled it down that my job as a casting director is to know everyone in the world who may want to act or who does act, who's even tangentially thinking about acting, and what they can do and what they can't do. And then to streamline the process specifically per project. I'll never know everybody. That's part of what I find so fun about being a casting director, is there's always work to do. But that's my job. So of course I want to try different people and learn new people and see, you know, someone who's known for comedy, see if they can do drama and all of that. But that's my job. I have to love actors. How can you do, I think I've met casting directors who don't necessarily love actors. I don't think any of the good ones. You have to love actors.
You know, I've got so many other questions that I want to talk about. We're nearing our hour right now. So
are we really?
Yeah, right? It just flies by.
Wow.
This is fun, right? It's not as painful as you thought it was going to be when you came in.
Sure.
I do want to talk quickly about two things. One, you got your first Artios nomination and award.
I did last year
For a short film.
Yes.
Which unfortunately isn't online. I searched everywhere for it.
If you asked me, I could have shown it to you.
Oh, well, could you send it to me
Sure.
now? I would love to watch it. What was it like for you after this amount of time and being a part of the Casting Society of America, to be honored by your peers in this way?
It's a great feeling. I didn't really expect the nomination. I didn't expect to win. I thought I knew who was going to win. But the project, a lit manager friend of mine called and said, I have a commercial directing client who wants to do more narrative work. He's got this short. Do you have an associate that can help him? And I was like, well, now I have to read it. And I read it and I said, okay, well, now I have to do it, because it was that good.
Yeah.
And it turned out really, really well. But it was nice to get nominated. It was nice to stand up there and win. You know, I can't remember what year I joined CSA. I joined late. I could have joined years before. I don't really know why. I just didn't. And it's nice to get up there and thank, as we talked about earlier, I thanked all of the casting directors who I worked for, in order, which I was impressed with myself, because that's a lot of pressure, because I hadn't really written a speech. In order, I thanked everybody.
But y'all casting directors, you have memories like...
Yeah, but not when there's 1,000 people staring at you.
Ah, okay.
It's 1,000 people at the Beverly Hilton staring at you while
there.
I'm standing up there holding a quite heavy obelisk. I didn't really realize they were that heavy. But it was nice. It was a good night. It was a good evening.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the CSA too, you are the vice president
I am.
of the CSA. And even though we've had a conversation with Richard Hicks, who is a former president of
Yes.
the CSA twice.
Yes.
We haven't really talked that much about the CSA and what y'all's mission actually is. And I kind of want to get into that just a little bit. Being the vice president of this organization, what does that actually entail? And how did you become involved and want to actually work with instead of just being, a member of?
My friend Monica Mickelson, who's an executive over at Paramount now, was on the board of CSA and said to me, "You should join the board. We have fun and you get to give back." And so I joined the board. And then, of course, what I didn't realize that there's term limits. So Monica was cycling off. So I essentially took her seat.
She set you up.
She set me up. That was 6 years ago. Look, the mission of the CSA distilled is to support casting directors. As we talked about earlier before the interview, not everybody understands what casting directors do. So to have a professional organization made up of people that do what you do is helpful. I mostly joined the board because I don't know a whole lot of casting directors. I like to say, people say, "Do you know so-and-so?" And my response is usually, I don't need any other casting directors in my life. For all of my casting needs, I'm fine. I can do it. But unless you've worked for someone or worked with someone, we don't get to meet a lot of our peers. And so I specifically joined the board to meet other casting directors, and I've made some great friendships. But the casting community and the business in general has been very good to me. So I like being able to give back. I don't know. What else am I supposed to be answering?
Oh, no, just why get involved? I think
Someone has to. Yeah. It's the right time in my life. My partner is a filmmaker. He and I are not having kids on purpose. So, I have the time. A lot of people don't. Our current president, Russell Boast, is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Not only does he have a career and a family, but he's president of CS. I don't know if he sleeps. I don't know what he does.
How he's doing.
How he's standing on any given basis with 2 kids. But I have the time to give back. And so furthering an understanding of casting, I think is important.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to get to is one of the things that you've been outspoken with at least a little bit on social media is the fact that
I have
a couple posts. Nothing bad. Because I agree with you. Why is it that casting directors still don't have an Academy Award?
Oh yes, I tend to be vocal about that.
Because casting directors became part of the Academy in the past few years. They're the 17th branch.
Yeah, we have our own branch. We are making great strides. I firmly believe that we will have an Oscar at some point. I don't know when that will be. I'm not a member of the Academy yet. Someday I hope to be.
What do you think has been the difficulty in convincing the Academy?
I think explaining what we do.
Because they just don't know.
They don't know. I think there's some Academy members that don't care, but I think most people don't know. People, executives don't know what we do. And it's something that Russell and I have actually talked about, and we're trying to find ways for CSA to both work hand in hand with the casting branch at the Academy to push forward getting an Oscar at some point. But I like to say a good casting director doesn't leave fingerprints. We do our job.
And that's what they say. You want
it to seem organic and
seamless.
Appropriate and seamless.
Uh-huh.
But by not leaving fingerprints, by not taking credit, by not doing interviews, I've had to convince casting directors to walk the red carpet at the Artios Awards because they don't want the publicity. They don't want the attention. To which I say, if not you, then who? Like, you've been nominated. If we don't celebrate ourselves and our craft, we tend to be forgotten. Mm-hmm. And A case in point, a movie of mine, which shall remain nameless, that I worked on a couple years ago, is premiering tonight in LA. I was not invited to the screening. They didn't, not on purpose, they just forgot. Because we're so early on that then, maybe if on a film, if I'm still casting the second week of photography, there's a problem. Like, there's a problem that we're trying to fix. Usually I'm done by day one. Mm-hmm. But then the film then is a family that are in the trenches making that we're not a part of. We go on to do another job. So we get forgotten a little bit, I think, sometimes.
That's kind of sad.
A little bit, yeah.
Because it is so important what you guys do.
Yeah, but we're not,
to define the
I show
project.
up to, I say but casting directors show up to wrap parties, and we know a producer. Television's different, they're there for the life of the show and they get to meet people usually in the production office. But for film, I've met the producer, maybe two of them. I know the director. I may have been introduced to the writer at some point. And I talk to the production coordinator 25 times a day for 6 weeks. I don't meet anyone else in the crew. If I go to set, I don't know who anyone is. It's an interesting place to be. Mm-hmm. But as it translates to people understanding what casting directors do, it's just education. Yeah. I firmly believe we will have an Oscar at some point. I think the craft warrants it. It's just turning a ship. Yeah. Yeah. There's also a lot of, as with picking one specific actor for a role and there being a lot of voices, it's the same thing with something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing with lighting on a set. Yeah. There are a lot of people who weigh in. The cinematographer gets the award for photography, but the director's weighing in on that. The gaffer's weighing in on that. It's all a process. Yeah. And I think that the fact that you guys aren't recognized at that level needs to change. Yeah,
look, I mean, casting directors who came before me tried for 25 years to be unionized.
And just to even get the title casting director.
Yeah. That was a fight. It's all a fight. Yeah. But
the visibility, I think, helps.
I think the visibility, we have not done ourselves as a craft any service by not highlighting what we do.
Yeah. And when you hear that, casting directors, come on this show. Tell us what you do. Let's let everybody know.
Absolutely. And, I said to you when you invited me, this is a learning thing for me. I don't particularly like talking about what I do, but it's important to the craft. It's important to the casting directors now that I'm, one of the elders, which isn't really true, but I am, to the people coming up who want to be casting directors, who are casting assistants now, take some pride in what you did and what you've collaborated and how you've contributed to the process. Mm-hmm. And if you turn down opportunities like this, or to be interviewed, or to walk a red carpet, that doesn't help the craft. Be out. We have to learn, I think, as a community to take some pride. Not that we're not proud, but to take some pride in public. Yeah. For what we do. We're the only main title credit that doesn't have an Oscar.
That has to change.
It does. It will.
I like the optimism. That's great.
I have to remain optimistic. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it definitely will change.
Well, there you have it, folks. Rich, thank you so much for coming in today. And we'll let you get back to work.
Thank you.
We hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Placing Faces. Rich is great. I highly recommend you follow him on all the social medias. Also, speaking of that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, love, heart, thumbs up, and share this show so we can keep making it. Again, many thanks to my producer, Maria Perry. This show would not be possible without you. Placing Faces is powered by Collaborator.com, a company both Maria and I work for. Collaborator.com's mission is to make sourcing, staffing, and production of video simple, efficient, and effective. We connect media professionals to companies, brands, and agencies, allowing you to scale your production based on your needs. Video professionals find work, and companies save money. We would also like to thank our partners at the Casting Society of America for introducing us to so many of our guests. They also serve as a hub of information about this branch of the film industry. To learn more about the Casting Society and what it takes to get into casting, you can visit castingsociety.com. We're going to keep doing this show until casting directors tell us no. So keep tuning in every Thursday. This is season 2. Until next time, thank you for listening and be well.